The Courting Happiness podcast official merchandise store is now open. I am so happy to be able to share that with you. I'm Dr. Kortni Alston. I'm so happy that you're here. Your support makes a difference. Thank you so much for listening to the Courting Happiness podcast. You know, it's so hard to believe that we started in 2020, and because of you, we've grown worldwide in the United States, India, Ireland, Australia, the United Kingdom, and more. Because of you, we've interviewed best-selling authors, scholars, podcasters, TEDx speakers, and entrepreneurs making a global impact. Because of you, FeedSpot has named Courting Happiness one of the top 80 podcasts for workplace and happiness. Because of you, the podcast is helping people and organizations with their well-being one episode at a time. We share positive psychology, work from thought leaders, and inspirational stories that create inclusion, belonging, and the value of optimism. I'm so grateful for your support. Your purchase in this store contributes to producing the Courting Happiness podcast and your commitment to the shared mission of helping with spreading workplace well-being and a happier life. Listeners like you help build Courting Happiness programming that promotes positivity, well-being, and it supports providing a range of content that continues with the mission. We need your support to continue to grow and create content that spreads happiness. We hope you love wearing these specially made t-shirts, totes, and sweatshirts designed by me, and even inspirational cups too. Trust me, your morning coffee will love it. Every design is my thank you to you. So check out the Courting Happiness merchandise store at drkortnialston.com/merchandise. That's drkortnialston.com/merchandise. Thank you so much for supporting Courting Happiness. Now, let's get back to the podcast. Welcome to the Courting Happiness podcast. This is a space where self-care becomes part of your day. A space where you learn evidence-based strategies to help your life, share it with those you love, and cultivate well-being at work. I'm your host, Dr. Kortni Alston. I'm a former news director, television reporter turned happiness scholar, TEDx speaker, and transformational trainer. I also understand hardships. While working my dream job in television, I lived a nightmare suddenly becoming a young widow after 86 days of marriage. I became committed to learning more about resilience, healing, and happiness. This is how I discovered my area of research, which is positive psychology. Now I'm living my calling of training individuals and organizations on happiness. And my new chapter begins with being happily engaged. The Courting and Courting Happiness is about a true courtship. I like to say commitment with happiness. The K in courting stands for the vulnerability of sharing my story, inspirational interviews with phenomenal people, the infusion of positive psychology, and so much more. You'll learn how to commit to your well-being one episode at a time. I hope you subscribe and share. So, are you ready? Let's get started. Welcome to episode 79. I'm Dr. Kortni Alston. I'm so happy that you're here. Thank you so much for listening. Your well-being is your most important job, and today we're going to focus on improving it with listening. Yes, listening. One of the things I value so much about my self-care squad is that they are exceptional listeners. Listening can help a person feel seen, supported, and safe. And it's interesting to have really a conversation with someone where you are feeling that they're not listening. Have you ever had a conversation like that where you're talking to someone and you're sharing information and you can tell that they're not quite there, that they're not listening to you? I mean, that is the quickest way for a person to shut down, to feel unsafe, and to feel unseen. In positive psychology, pleasant social connections can increase our well-being. And one of the easiest ways to do that is listening. Really active listening. Spending time with family and friends helps increase positive emotions, which is the key to happiness. And listening can help unlock good and empathetic conversations that improve our well-being. PositivePsychology.com provides 6 tips to help become an empathetic listener. And you can check out the article and learn more by visiting the podcast page of this podcast for this episode at drkortnialston.com/podcast/episode 79. That's drkortnialston.com/podcast/episode 79. Okay, so let's dive in to those 6 tips to become an empathetic listener. Number 1 is nonverbal involvement. Now, you can show that you're paying attention by showing that you're paying attention, right? As it relates to maybe nodding your head or maybe making certain sounds that shows that you're listening. So that nonverbal involvement is so key. I will say, when I was working as a television reporter and I would interview people, and I would either go to their homes or I would just go out, and I was covering stories and meeting individuals. And when I would interview them, especially with the camera being there, right? Because that could be a little intimidating, if not a lot intimidating, to have a camera there while you're talking to someone. One of the things I always did and continue to still do is I always made sure I was giving eye contact. And I would always really instruct a person to look at me and not the camera. Forget the camera's even here. It's just you and I having a conversation. But I would always give these nonverbal cues. And for me, it was about letting the person that I'm interviewing know that I'm listening, and then hopefully being able to create a safe environment so they can feel seen. So nonverbal involvement is so important. Number 2, pay attention to the speaker and not your thoughts. So I love in the article, it shares this. It says, be mindful, devote your attention to the speaker. So being mindful means being present, focus on what is happening at this time, at this moment. And I always like to share it in terms of undivided attention. So when I was working as a news director, managing a newsroom in Baltimore, I was a fellow in a management training program for news professionals. So for news directors and executive producers all throughout the country. And one of the elements that they shared, one of the great lessons that they shared with us as news leaders, is the value of undivided attention. And so paying attention to the speaker and not your thoughts and being mindful speaks to undivided attention. So I love that they've shared this in number 2. So here is the 3rd tip. So we're halfway there as it relates to the tips given to us by PositivePsychology.com. And number 3, practice non-judgment. Practice non-judgment. Whew, that says a lot, right? Practice non-judgment. Being mindful means practicing non-judgment. There is no need to agree or disagree with what's being shared. Did you hear what I just say? I love this about the article. It says there is no need to agree or disagree with what is being shared. Remember that you're offering an active presence, which is more than receiving a message without judgment or responding with our own bias, right? So that can be a real lesson in itself in regards to practicing without judgment. Practice non-judgment. And being mindful means practicing non-judgment. Love it. Number 4, tolerate silence, they shared. And I like to say, be comfortable in the silence. Resist the urge they offer to fill moments of silence. It can give a speaker and receiver a chance to reflect. So I love that in terms of how to process the silence, of giving yourself time to reflect and giving the speaker or the receiver time to reflect. And even right now during this podcast, right? Of course, I'm filling in all of this, space with speaking. But what if I just did this? Paused. Maybe in that pause, you might have reflected on some of the things I shared. Maybe in that pause, in terms of the silence, it could have given you a chance to really think through the podcast thus far. Or maybe you're thinking about how you're going to apply what you're learning. So there's so much power. There's so much power in silence. So I love that. Resist the urge to fill moments of silence, giving you, as either the speaker or the receiver, an opportunity to reflect. So the next time you're having a conversation with someone, or better yet, they're sharing information with you, I hope you can embrace being comfortable in silence. Number 5, paraphrase. There is a lot of power in paraphrasing. You can start off with a statement they mentioned in regards to, so you're saying, right? Or repeat in your own words what the person has shared. And research actually supports. It shows that it might not make the person feel understood, but it can create intimacy in the conversation, right? So when I'm talking to someone and I'm sharing information and someone's paraphrasing with me, I really feel seen. I'm like, okay, all right, they're there with me. You know, they're processing the information too. So I love that they've mentioned the value and really the power of paraphrasing. And last but not least, number 6, ask questions. So when you respond, work not just to share your point of view. They say it really urge, which is that urge, right? You might want to tell a story about the topic, but they say resist sharing your point of view, but yet think about questions. So for example, it mentions if someone is sharing how they're sad about a lost pet, do not respond by talking about when the last time it happened to you. Instead, ask them a follow-up question to show that you care about their experience. Notice that. Ask a follow-up question to show that you care. To show that you care. That is powerful. Show your attentiveness using sentences such as, I can imagine how sad you must have been. Or in a happy update, I hope you're impressed with yourself. I love this in terms of asking questions. One of the things that I will do in a conversation, and I will say, well, how did that make you feel? Or asking the person to continue to elaborate, or really following the lead, whatever is being shared, to ask questions of care, whatever that looks like. Because some of those examples, depending on the circumstances or the situation, may not work well. That's why empathy is so important, is to think about the conversation itself and being present, being mindful to sort out what is the best way to share the information. One of the things I share with the friends is I always like to write, meaning in a text form, and I always like to speak in a way that they always feel like they're getting a hug from me, meaning that it is positive information, or it's making them feel safe, making them feel seen. And I think asking very mindful questions and really, really being present, but leaning deep into empathy will allow you to ask questions that care. Questions to show that you care and that you care about their experience. So in another published article, this one is by the Harvard Business Review, And you can find it on the episode page of this podcast, which is at drkortnialston.com/podcast/episode 79. So in the published Harvard Business Review article written by Manber Carr, the article is titled, "Want Stronger Relationships at Work? Change the way you listen." So this is great to be able to take this information as it relates to elements of your job. And so what I love that Carr states is, and I'm going to quote Carr, quote, "Use both your head and heart. Try to understand not just the what, but also the why. Good listening will help you understand not just the reasons, but also help you connect with the emotions behind what's being said," end quote. So the next time you listen with both your head and heart. In the workplace, lead with compassion. And no matter what, lean into empathy. Remember, your well-being is your most important job. Thank you so much for listening. Let's continue this conversation online. Email us at podcast@drkortnialston.com. That's podcast@drkortnialston.com. Join us on Instagram at Courting Happiness. Don't forget, that's courting with a K. Also, I hope you join our private Facebook community. You can find us at Courting Happiness Podcast Community. Our private Facebook group is a safe haven to share, meet more people looking to build positive relationships, focus on well-being, and create a happier life. Now, are you ready to spread happiness? We hope you subscribe and share this podcast with your family, friends, coworkers, and all the important people in your world. We release a new episode every Thursday. Congratulations on your continued commitment to your courting happiness journey. Thank you so much for listening. We want you to be well, be happier, and be kinder to yourself. We can't wait to see you next week.